Hey guys, so I'm sorry about this, but I'm running a fever and I have a cough and a headache, and it's too many COVID symptoms for me to want to risk coming into class. So instead of meeting tomorrow, I'm just going to go ahead and try to walk through everything that we were going to cover in class, and just kind of have you look at it here on the video screen. Sorry. The two things that we were going to talk about today or tomorrow were the persuasive argumentative paragraph, and editing for clarity and concision. So we'll start with the persuasive argumentative paragraph. Let me go ahead and download it over here. We'll need to keep an eye on time because the screencast will only go 15 minutes at a time. But so here's the start of it. So we've been working toward writing a persuasive argumentative paragraph the entire semester. That's really what most college writing is. And the goal in here is just to convince your audience that your perspective is valid. So main goals are going to be to convince a reader that your perspective is valid, what I just said. Encourage a reader to take a certain action or point of view, use evidence to make a logical argument, and to take a stance or explain why you think or feel that way. Some of the main strategies of IPA is actually more geared toward persuasive analysis or persuasive argumentative than any of the other modes. And so it's going to be especially important for you to use these steps. So make sure you introduce any evidence, present it, and then analyze, or in other words, explain why you included that or why it's important. I'm not seeing this step as much as I would like in a lot of your paragraphs. So definitely make sure that you go in and do that. The modes are not mutually exclusive, so compare contrast is actually used a lot in persuasive argumentative, especially when you're comparing one position with another or one piece of evidence with another to say, why you agree or disagree with something. So let's say that you were writing a persuasive argumentative on why school should only be 3 days a week. Well, you'd be comparing you might compare someone who thinks school should be 5 days a week and why they think that with why you think it should only be 3 days a week. You're also going to use appeals to convince your reader of your perspective. And appeals are just kind of categories of evidence that have a certain effect. So logos appeals to logic. So it's anything that makes the reader think logically about a topic. Pathos appeals to emotion. So it's anything that makes the reader feel something or react emotionally. And ethos is an appeal to credibility or reputation. So it's the information that makes you trust a writer more. It might be an affiliation with like a university. You might say something like, I've been doing this for 20 years. Anything like that is going to appeal to ethos. So the structure of the persuasive argumentative paragraph is pretty much what we've been talking about. You start with a topic, sentence, or thesis. You need to have an arguable acclaim. So it can't be something that it has to be something that other people can disagree with. And then you also need your main evidence. So that's something I'm seeing missing in a lot of thesis statements. So make sure you outline your main points that you're going to discuss in that first sentence. Exposition is the IPA. You introduce evidence, present evidence, and analyze evidence. That's pretty similar to what we've been doing. And the transition sentence is also pretty similar. So you're going to restate your claim and evidence and explain why it matters. So prompts, pretty much, with the exception of a few informative prompts, most writing in college is in this mode. So you're mostly going to be writing persuasive argumentative essays and paragraphs in your college career. Some signal words, like some keywords that you look for to indicate this type of prompt, would be explain, consider, relate, opinion, think, why or why not. And a lot of times these will be phrased as questions. So if you see a prompt that is a question, like it's asking you, especially if it's asking your opinion or what you think about something, it's probably going to be persuasive argumentative. So reversing the prompt, all persuasive argumentative prompts will ask you to take a stance or to decide what side you're on. So that's going to be your first step. Do you agree or disagree with the prompt? And then you'll start your sentence with your stance. So for example, do you think that uniforms should be required in high school? Why or why not? So we can see these signal words think, you can see it's a question, you can see why or why not in there. So then to reverse the prompt, you start with your stance and / response to the question. So uniforms should not be required in high school because, and then you add a blank on there. Let me put my cat out of the room. Okay, so after you reverse the prompt, you're going to do some quick pre-writing. So what are some reasons you can think of to fill in the blanks in the last step? You really want to come up with at least 3 and think about how those reasons support your claim. And it's a good idea to go ahead and just like jot down some notes at this point, especially when you're doing research, to kind of think about what kind of evidence you might want to integrate. Then you're going to fill in the blanks to create your topic sentence or your thesis statement. The difference between a topic sentence and a thesis statement in this mode is normally the thesis statement goes at the end of the introduction in an essay, and it's the topic sentence. If you have just a paragraph by itself, it'll be your topic sentence. So I'm kind of using the terms interchangeably at this point because they serve the same purpose in the paragraphs, but when we get to the essays, there'll be just a slight bit difference. So your general format for your thesis statement for a persuasive argumentative paragraph is going to be, or essay, is going to be X equals A plus B plus C. So claim, which is X, is valid because evidence. This format is relatively easy and it will almost always work. I can only maybe think of one time in all the writing I've done in my life where this form didn't work for actually writing this type of essay. So our example, do you think that uniforms should be required in high school? Why or why not? So again, I've bolded our signal words. We've kind of gone back. Uniforms should not be required in high school, X. So that's our claim because is a joining word. And then the parts that are underlined are the A, B, and C. So they stifle student creativity is A, place an unnecessary financial burden on families is B, and discourage students from developing a unique sense of self is C. One second. Okay, so then you're going to write your exposition after you write that first sentence. So this is pretty simple. You have point A, you'll introduce, present, and analyze point A, and then point B, you'll introduce, present, and analyze point B, and then point C, you'll introduce, present, and analyze point C. It's just the whole IPA thing that we've been talking about all semester. So as a reminder, make sure you explain why you feel you do. You may think that a piece of evidence is enough, but what's important, especially important in this mode, is explaining your thought process, explaining your reasoning. And so even if you think that the reader would get it from what you've said, make sure you take that extra step and put the analyze in there. You're going to use evidence, logic, or emotion to support your points. Really the difference between an argumentative mode and a persuasive mode is that persuasive primarily uses emotion and argumentative primarily uses logic and data. But in reality, you'll probably use both of them in most types of essays. So I combine the two modes because they're not really mutually exclusive. You do use them both. All of your evidence should connect back to your thesis or topic sentence, and other people should be able to disagree with you. You're trying to convince someone of a stance, but that doesn't work if what you're doing is something that is obvious or that is not arguable. So if you were arguing, if your thesis statement was the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776, well, that's not really arguable. It was. So there's not really much to say on that. There's not really anything to disagree with. If you get stuck, then ask yourself some questions. Does my evidence support my claim? Why did I include this piece of evidence? What do I want the reader to think or learn? And how do I want the reader to react? And then finally, you'll write your transition sentence. So you'll paraphrase your thesis statement or topic sentence, and then you'll add the reason why it's important. So what consequences come if the other perspective wins or wins out? So in the example we were talking about above, I'm saying that schools should not require school uniforms. Well, what happens if schools do require school uniforms? How might that be detrimental to students? Another way you could add it in would be to ask, what should the reader do after reading this? So it's called a call to action, but sometimes you want the reader to take a specific in a specific action. So let's say you were writing a persuasive argumentative paragraph about why someone should buy a certain product. Well, what you'd want to do is have the reader buy the product. And then, similarly, if you want the reader to have a certain reaction, let's say you should be angry about, or you should care about this issue. Well, you'd want the reader to react by caring at the end. And so you might address that in the transition sentence. And then finally, there's a really good resource here about examples of argumentative language and how to write these types of paragraphs. So you might want to check this out. And I'm going to stop this video here, and then I'll do the example paragraph. So I'll see you guys in a couple seconds.